The Growing Up Brooklyn podcast is a Black Pharaoh Gaming production.
Welcome to the Growing Up Brooklyn podcast. I'm your host, Coach Ty. And on today's episode, we have a special guest. He is the host and moderator of the Sports Chasers podcast, a podcast that I got to check out. And when I say that him and his co-host got some great content, oh man, look, I was just telling him in pre-production, the one thing that New Yorkers can do, we can talk sports for hours and hours and hours like there's no tomorrow. He's a Knicks fan, so I wore this shirt specifically because I saw he had a Knicks hat on. So I said, you know what? I want to get his take on what happened with Tibbs, and we're going to talk about that later in the pod. But representing the planet of Flatbush, Brooklyn, we have Mr. Kevin L. Warren on the show. Welcome, Kevin, to the show.
Thanks, Coach Ty. I appreciate you reaching out, and this is an honor, man. I appreciate you, and I just love Brooklyn. I love where I'm from. Stand up, Brooklyn. Brooklyn is all that, and sorry, other four boroughs. Brooklyn is number one, numero uno. So I love Brooklyn, and I'm ready to talk about it, man. So let's do it.
Yeah, man. I tell people all the time, man. Listen, everybody has their take on Brooklyn, but everybody wants to live and be from Brooklyn because that's just the way we move, man. I mean, Harlem has, they have their fashion. Queens is always like the burbs. Staten Island was forgotten about. And the Bronx, to us, the Bronx is the hood, even though the Bronx calls us the hood. And I find that offensive all the time. But come on, Bronx, let's be real. You guys are the hood. Let's be real. But like I said, man, everybody wants to be from Brooklyn. And again, when I reached out and saw your story, and I said, you know what, let me get this guy on this pod, and and let's shake things up. And like I said, we can talk sports, man. So, but as I always open the podcast, tell me, what is your earliest memory growing up in Brooklyn?
The earliest memory I can remember. So I was born in Wyckoff Heights Hospital in Wyckoff Heights, of course. A little bit right outside Bushwick. And so my parents at the time, they was living in Crown Heights and right there on Lincoln Place in Washington. So I remember one Saturday, it's probably about 4 or 5 years old, man. I remember my mother taking me to the Brooklyn Museum. And that was pretty, I didn't really understand. I just remember she was just dragging me along. She said, hey, we're going to go see some stuff. And yeah. So we literally walked up a couple blocks, went in there. I don't know if we paid or nothing like that. But it was just interesting to just walk around. You seeing the artifacts and things of that nature. And that was one of my earliest memories of growing up in Brooklyn, just walking on Eastern Parkway and going to the Brooklyn Museum.
Yeah, man. And for you to have that piece of history so close, I just remember class trips going to the Brooklyn Museum, and it was just like, the greatest thing in the world, like you said, to see the art and the I think back then they had like the dinosaurs. It's like to see all that stuff, in Brooklyn of all places. Like you just didn't think that you had so much history, man. So yeah, shout out to the Brooklyn Museum. I definitely got to make a trip back because I wanted to see that Jay-Z exhibit that they had in there, and I didn't get a chance to go check it out.
Yes, I know a couple of people that went. They said it's really dope and it's phenomenal. His exhibit and how all they kept some of the artifacts on, I guess, the record company, and he was able to get it back and put it on display.
Yeah, that's big. That a lot of artists, they don't. He's one of the few artists that got to, get his masters and get a lot of his, and that was part of his deal with when he became the president of Def Jam. A lot of people don't know was that when he signed the deal, he also signed to get his masters back. So, but that's how we move in Brooklyn, man. We always gonna find that Brooklyn hustle. We're gonna find a way to make something work for us, man. So, big up Jay.
Yeah.
So how would you describe your neighborhood back then? If you've gone back recently, what are some of the differences you've seen in your neighborhood?
So, excuse me. So, like I said, we born in came home to Crown Heights when I was born, and then my folks, they moved to brand new at the time, Starrett City. Starrett City was the newest thing, the thing to be, the place to be. I forgot what they call it now. I literally was just up there this weekend, as I was telling you pre-production.
Something in Spring Creek, because I was just up there. Yeah.
Yeah. So we moved there, stayed there probably almost 10 years, and then my folks, they bought a house in Flatbush, and Flatbush was just, well, let me just go back to Star City. Star City, like I said, was new. I met some friends, and it was just, I do remember this, the blackout. the blackout. I'm probably dating myself, but the 77 blackout. I never forget my uncle who was living, I think they was living in Bed-Stuy at the time. The lights went out or whatever, and me, my mom, and I don't think my brother was born yet, but the lights went out. I just remember saying, man, ain't no lights on. It was just weird. And then when we got to Star City had their own lights because they had their own power plants. So we had lights in Star City. So I do remember that joint right there. It was that was crazy. So yeah, Star City had its own flavor. And like I said, my folks they bought a house in Flatbush, and we lived there until But that neighborhood was it was Flatbush, Millwood, so to speak, and not too far from the junction. And if those that know that are watching, those that ain't from Brooklyn, the junction is where Flatbush and Nostrand meet. And that's where the numbers 2 and the 5 train meet. The B41 and B44 for all my people that takes mass transit. So yeah, I'm letting you know, man. So and I also did work for transit when I was up there too. So we can talk about that also. I was a subway conductor as well. So
That's
yeah,
what's up,
stand clear
man.
of the closing doors.
Oh, that's what's up. Yeah, my dad was actually a token booth clerk.
Okay, cool, man.
What's
So
up?
we moved there, and it was just cool, man. I just remember having good memories. My cousins coming over to the crib, and remember playing stick ball. People saying like, "Dad, what is stick ball?" You're gonna have to. I'll give you the stick ball. Is just basically baseball, and you're playing against the wall. You got the pitcher, and you got the hitter at the wall. And sometimes we spray paint the your strike box, or if you didn't want to spray paint it, you got you got some tape. And I just remember because I was a huge sports guy, so I remember playing outside. Playing outside to the lights. When you had to come inside when the lights
That's right.
came on, or else mom come screaming your name. And you know who your mother is because you heard that distinctive scream of "Ma," or when she called your name, Kevin. So those just some fun times. I just remember walking around the junction buying sneakers. When I got my own little job, and just in the people. Because of how Flatbush is, it's just a melting pot of people from everywhere from Jamaicans, Haitians, Trinidadians, Guyanese, a lot of the Caribbean people
Right.
in that area, man. And so it was just cool. And on my block I had at the time when I first moved there, it was Italian lady across the street. There was an Irish fireman right next to me. And I had Jamaican, and I had Haitian across the street, and then back of me in the alleyway, their houses, I had 2 Trinidadian families and 1 Jamaican family. And we
Wow.
just was all cool with one another, you know what I mean? So it was just a good vibe, man. We all looked out for each other on the block, making sure everybody's the kids were good, and it was just had some good times, man. It really was.
Yeah, and that and you brought up a point that I think everybody touched upon. Is how the neighborhood looked out for each other.
Yes,
In other words, that if you were doing wrong and the neighbor saw you doing wrong, and it didn't matter if it was the Italian neighbor, you said, or the Jamaican,
Irish,
Trinidadian,
yeah.
they were gonna chastise you. And then when your parents got home, you got it. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like, oh, don't chastise my child. Like, it was a village raising each other, and it didn't matter. Like, and that's one thing that when I see these kids today growing up, they don't have that. Like, it's a missing piece of the community. Where people look out for each other. Kids, like where I live. I'm in Florida now, and where I live, I'm an empty nester. It's a small block though, but if I saw my neighbor's kids doing wrong, I would say something. That's just the New York in me. That's something that I've carried for me as a kid. So tell me, what kind of kid were you, and how did Brooklyn shape you from your childhood into the man you are today?
Well, my mother, if she was on this with me, she would probably say that Kevin was a good kid. Kevin didn't get in no trouble. He was smart. And I used to like to read all the time, man. I was a nerd, man. I like to read all the time. I like information. I sought information, and I tell my niece all the time. I be telling, I say, yo, if I had a cell phone back then, I would be summa cum laude every day. Because y'all got the information in the back of at the tip of your fingers. I says, I said, and I always said to her dad, my brother, And I said, yo, me and your brother, I said, I had to take your brother to the library and, we got to go find the book, the Dewey Decimal System and all that
Yep.
stuff. And, take out the library books and hopefully you bring it back so it won't be overdue. You know what I'm
Taught you a
saying?
sense of responsibility, right?
Right. And, just doing that. So I was that type of kid, but I also like sports too. So I played all the sports. I played basketball, of course, football. We played in the street, and sometimes if we can find some grass, we played in the grass. Played tackle football. Now that I look at that now, I said, man, we was really crazy back then doing that tackle
Right.
football, man. With no pads and nothing like that, and baseball, of course, and stickball and handball. So I was just very athletic kid back then, and I think that pretty much shaped me. And I just love sports. And my father. And I would say my favorite sport was baseball because of how my father introduced this to us, man. He would, toss the ball to us. I remember the first bat that he bought me, the first glove, and he would literally just toss the ball to me, let me hit, go to the yard. And he got me in Little League early. And I just remember, playing sports, and that's just all me and my peoples and my neighbors, and we just play sports, even hockey. And I know you're like, well, how did you get into hockey? I said, well, yeah, I was the only black guy out there wanted to learn how to play hockey, and I got involved into it.
Yeah.
So I started playing. I'll never forget my mother. I asked her one day. I said, Mom, I need to get some hockey gloves and a hockey stick. And she looked at me and she was like, you? I said, yeah, yeah, yeah. I want to play hockey. I want to play street hockey. I already had skates. So for roller hockey, the guys who I was playing with, they say, yeah, man, you can't be playing. We need to get you a stick and stuff like that. So my mother, just like our moms do, who love her kids, she says, meet me. And I'm literally like 12. If that we said that today, go meet you. Nah, 12 or 11 years old, I go meet her, go get on the train and go meet her downtown. And we go to Modell's and we go get the hockey stick. And we ride back on the train with the hockey stick. So it was yeah. So like I said, I play anything and everything. Anything that has some with a ball or something to do with it, I played it, man. So I think that's absolutely shaped me into the person that I am. I'm very competitive when it comes to things, whether it be on the field, of course, or just with some of my dudes on the on my co-hosts on the podcast, man. We'll make sure we iron sharpens iron, man. So, I'm super competitive when it comes to those things. And those growing up with the aspect of me being, I guess, a quote unquote nerd. I mean, I wasn't a very great student. I was average. I hated math and it showed because I really wasn't good at it. I can add, subtract, multiply, and divide. But when it came to what is the integer blah, blah, blah.
It's I feel you on that, man. And I went to Brooklyn Tech, so I went to an engineering school.
See?
And they got to the point where, and I was an architecture major, and I thought I wanted to be this architect, and I was like, I ain't gonna need none of this stuff. And then, but I tell people all the time, Brooklyn Tech did help me, because when you mentioned it, and you made a similar reaction when I tell people I go to, they're like, oh, it catches them like, yeah, like everybody that from Brooklyn knows how big Brooklyn Tech is. Where did you go to high school?
I went to Lafayette.
Oh, okay.
I went to Lafayette. So my zone school at the time was on South Shore, right? So and what happened was all of my cousins on my dad's side, all of them went there, and my brother and my sister and everybody that I knew. And I didn't want to go there because they was like, yo, you going to South Shore? I was like, nope, I don't want to go to South Shore. So at that time, they had choice and school choice. So I put in for Midwood, Lafayette, some school in I don't know, Stuyvesant. I don't know why I put in for Stuyvesant, but I put in for Stuyvesant, and I put in for there was a program at New Utrecht. So I wound up getting to I got into Lafayette. So I went to Lafayette, and I loved all my time in Lafayette. It was very good. I did not want to go to South Shore, man. So
Yeah, sadly, I think Lafayette is closed now. I think that's one of the.
Lafayette has like 10 schools in it.
Yeah.
It's not Lafayette no more. I don't know what they call it. Same thing for South Shore. They call it something else, but
And Canarsie, I think Canarsie went through that same change too. Like, and I hate, I know why they did it, but I hate it because they kind of took away the traditions those schools
yes.
had. Like, Listen, one of my best football games I ever had was actually against Lafayette at Lafayette. One of the best games I ever had. And then the second one was at Canarsie because all my friends, East New York isn't that far. So all
Right.
my friends was there. Two best games I had in my life was Lafayette and Canarsie.
Okay.
Shout out to Redmond, right? Wasn't it the Redmond?
Yeah, to the Lafayette Redmond, man. I should have
Yeah.
wore my shirt.
Listen,
actually
man.
just had
People,
a
like I said, what's his name? John Franco, I know, was a big time alum from Lafayette. So
John Franco, yep, he was alumni. What else? What's my man that he passed away? CNN anchor. What is his name? Larry. He was with CNN.
oh, Larry King.
Larry King is a Lafayette alumni. Yes.
That's what's up. Wow.
And Sandy Koufax is a Lafayette alumni.
Wow. And that's the history that gets lost when they change the names of these schools like that. Like the school system didn't even think that these kids will never know the names and the people who've come through those hallways in the past
Right.
that really shaped what Lafayette was back then, you know. And all those schools went through a rough patch, you know. Because like I said, when I applied to Brooklyn Tech, I had to take the test, but I got it. If I didn't go to Brooklyn Tech, I was going to Grady. That's where I was going.
Oh, you was going to Grady. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to Grady to play basketball. They didn't have a football team then.
I still think when I was going, they didn't have a football team, but their basketball teams were always good
Always
back then.
tough. Yeah. I didn't want to go to Lincoln because Lincoln was always good, and I just wanted to be part of the process that beat Lincoln, and I never got a chance to beat Lincoln when I played, and then I got injured and didn't take care of my grades and all. That's a whole nother story for a whole nother time. But Lincoln was the school that I really, I mean, everybody wanted to beat. You know, my brother, I have a brother that went to Madison, another brother that went to Canarsie, a sister that graduated from there. So, like you said, man, you don't want to go to that school where you know everybody. You want to go somewhere where you can kind of plant your flag and make your name for yourself. So,
Yep, and that's what my thought process was, and they, my siblings were mad at me. They was like, "Why you not?" My sister, my big sister, she was like, "Why you not going?" In? I was like, "I don't want to be known as." Shout out to my sister. She showed me some love this weekend. Shout out to my sister. She took care of her baby brother, this weekend when I was up there. But I just didn't want to. I did not want to be known as Valerie's brother.
yeah. Rightfully so. Rightfully so. So what was your school experience like? Were there any teachers or moments that really had an impact on your life?
So I'll never forget, what was his name in school. So this was in high school, and his name was Mr. Brace. Mark Brace was his name, and he taught like an English class. And I'll never forget. And I had saw the movie beforehand, but he kind of let us. He showed us do the right thing, right? And we kind of like broke it down, and what was some of the significant meanings of things. What was Radio Raheem's? We just broke down and depicted what Spike Lee was trying to say in the movie. And he was just an out the box thinker when it came to teaching. And with that, I'll never forget. And one of his quotes he used to say he said, "If you don't be in control, you'll be out of control." And he just explained to the fact that if you don't check your emotions, man, it's going to cost you something. And he will always used to say that. And there was a dude in my class, I forgot his name, man. He was just a real hyper individual, man. And he used to say that to us, man. But getting back how he schooled us with the do the right thing and how we, was breaking it down, man. I was like, man, this is pretty cool, man. And it made you feel like you wasn't in school, so to speak. So shout out to him for having some forward thinking and just and that was some real times about what Spike was doing when he was trying to show that movie how you have black people in the community in Bed-Stuy, you have the white people and Sal's pizza restaurant with the white guys playing baseball and stuff on the wall, and then what's his name character said, "Yeah, where the black guys on the wall?" And Sal's like, "Yo, this is my restaurant. Go get your own restaurant." Just a whole racial thing, and how communities, even to this day, how sometimes those racial strifes get in the way, and just basically people just want the same thing, man. They just want the same thing, man. But it's just different cultures that clash, and this is why we have some of these clashes. Shout out to Mr. Brace for doing that. There was another. What was his name? I like social studies. Mr. Abbey. and social studies in Lafayette, man. He was good too. Cause I like history, and I've always liked history. And I was cracking up with my sister this week, and she said, "You always been such a nerd, man." She was like, because we was talking about, why. She was like, "Why the parkways is the way it is?" I said, "Yo, there was this dude back in the '60s and the '50s, Robert Moses, man.
Robert Moses, yep.
He constructed all these parkways here in the city, and he kind of did it on the racial tip, so that it can be, blacks can be divided against the whites, and that's why some of that stuff was done, man. So if you're driving in New York, you're on the Belt Parkway, you're on the Cross Island Parkway. If you notice, there's height requirements where the trucks can't be on those parkways because of the clearance. So they really wanted those trucks to take different routes, and he just wanted it to be free flowing. He didn't care about mass transportation. He only cared about, at the time, the elitists having vehicles and people getting around New York and on the expressways and stuff like that. So he created the BQE. If you're driving on the BQE, you see it stacked twice around the Brooklyn Bridge. That was his idea, man, and he tore up a lot of communities doing that too. So that's about it with that. So yeah, I love history, man. I love history.
Yo, it's funny that because I'm the same way. History was my favorite subject at Tech, and when you talk about the Robert Moses thing, so I'm sure you know this, but this is for our audience. Where the Brooklyn Nets arena is right now, the Barclays Center, is where Peter O'Malley wanted to put Dodger Stadium.
Yes.
Robert Moses blocked it, and he moved it to Flushing because he wanted the people coming from Long Island to have an easier drive, to your point, to watch baseball. So that's why we got Shea, and that's why we didn't get the Dodger Stadium in where the Barclays Center is right now. That's where they wanted to move it, and Robert Moses is the one that blocked it and wanted Shea where it is to accommodate the people coming from Long Island. Because remember, there's only one train that went to Shea. And to your point, he wanted the vehicles on there, and the 7 train is the only train that went to Shea. Yankee Stadium, you can get there a bunch of ways, but Shea was his baby, and he didn't want a lot of people coming there, but he wanted the people from Long Island to be able to get there. So that was, when you said his name, I lit up because I was like, wow, like somebody else that knows that Robert Moses really ran the city.
None of the mayors ran it. He ran the city. He was the dude. Definitely. Like I said, I talk about that all night, how he did that. And what else I was going to say about Robert Moses? You mentioned that about him and the that's why we got the Nets and that. What else I was going to say? I forgot my thought, but I guess it'll come back to me about Robert Moses, man. But yeah, I just love history, man, and I'm a history buff, and especially things about Brooklyn. As I've said before, man, I worked on the subway. I was a subway conductor. And I was fascinated with the trains back when I was a kid. And I just remember taking the test. And it wasn't a thing like I had to be it, because actually when I got the, when I took the test, I took it, back in the days. I don't know how they do it up there now. I don't know if people's looking for the chief is if people getting the chief. The chief was it online. For those that don't know, the chief is the civil servant paper of New York City, where you can look up any civil servant job, see if they filing for it. So I remember my father used to tell us, hey, get the chief, fill it out, take the test. My old man, he's a retired NYPD homicide detective. So he would always tell me and my brother, so, fill it out. So him and my sister, she works for transit. She's about to retire. I worked there for about 5 years as a subway conductor, and my brother was a bus operator for about 6 years before he moved south. So yeah, we was all civil service in New York, man. But getting back to the train, the train was, like I said, I was fascinated with it when I was a kid. And then when they called me for a funny story, when I got called to be a bus operator, but I got a ticket one day out at Kennedy Airport, right around Kennedy Airport, where I was doing what? I was working as a Christmas casual for the U.S. Post Office. Yeah, so I got
I got a parallel for that. I got something for you for that.
So I got a ticket. So when transit called me for bus operator, they say, "Yo, you got points in your license, man. It didn't fall off yet." And then the lady came back and she said, "Hey, I see that you took the conductor test. And you got a 90 on it. You want to do conductor?" I was like, "Sure." And at the time I was working in the mailroom, and I'll get to my mailroom story. I love my mailroom story because that's where I met some of the greatest people that I still am, will still people to this day. But I took the conductor test, and there I was back in the mid '90s. I was subway conductor on the we call it the B division. There's different divisions. So the number lines are called the A division, and the letters are called the B division. And I worked at the B division, and my best line I used to like to work was the A.
Yeah, yeah, that A train, just the route from where it goes from Washington Heights to go all the way out to either Leffords or out to Rockaway. That's a long route, but it just you just go through so many cultures going through. Like people don't even realize every stop has a story, and that A line just it goes basically through the heart of it's like I would say that's like the I forgot the name of the artery, but that's like the main artery of
Hmm.
the city is that A line, the way that it runs.
Yep, and that's why I liked it because it was outside and it was inside, and you saw, like you said, there was just different peoples and stuff like that. And yeah, I definitely I digged. I did, like I said, I did it for 5 years, man. And my time came up, and it was time for me to do something else, man. And like I said, my brother he drove the B-41 out of Flatbush, and yeah, he liked it because he said he didn't like the 46 because it made too many turns, and he didn't like the 44 because it was too crazy on there. So he said he just needs something to go straight. He said from Kings Plaza to Captain Plaza, he was good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and as I was telling, I had a previous guest on, and we was talking about the bus routes and the 46 and the dollar vans and stuff like that.
Dollar Vans, dog. Remember that?
Yeah,
Are they
dollar
still running that? Well, no, I think yeah.
Utica, Utica.
You took out Flatbush.
Yeah, it's funny that you said the phone because again, it's funny that as we're talking, like a lot of the parallels. So I worked in JFK Airport as a mail handler from like 90. I want to say 90s to like 90. I was there. I was only there for a couple of years. But I tell people, I say everything you hear bad about the post office, believe it. Believe it. I mean, from the drinking and everything else that went on in there. I'm friends with still with a few people, but that was probably the best decision I made. I was like, nah, I can't. I can't do this.
I saw it as a casual, man. I was like, man, that's how y'all get down, man. And I did it for 2 Christmases in a row.
I feel for you because we treated the casuals really bad. Like
Yeah, I did.
Christmas was like a vacation for us. When it was Christmas time and the Christmas and my youngest brother was a Christmas casual one time. I'm like, bro, I'm just telling you, we driving in. I'm gonna tell you now, I'm sorry, bro. But they didn't let him work in my section because he was my brother. But man, when they came in, hey, can you grab that postcard? Hey, move this over here. Hey, like
Yeah.
we
I
were
know
like air traffic control. We was just moving, and we for a couple of months out of the year, we got to chill out, man.
Yeah. I never forget this girl named Jessica, man. She was sunning me the whole time, man. I was like, dang. I said, Jessica, you gonna do any work in my head? I said, well, let me just chill, man. And I became cool with some people, and I came back a second time, man. And, but yeah, that first year, I was like, whew, I came home tired. I was like, gosh.
Yeah, and the work ain't the same no more. Obviously, with the growth of the internet, you
Yeah,
don't get the same
volume.
mail and stuff flowing through. So they've cut. Like I said, it's a friend of mine. She just retired like 2 months ago. She said like it was just time to go. It wasn't the same. Like most of them stayed lifers, but she was
Mhm.
like, nah, like it's not even the same. The work ain't the same. The mail, you get she said mainly it's overseas stuff, but even that's chopped down because of the internet and people don't get their bills in the mail no more. So shout out to all the mail workers out there still doing their thing.
Shout out to all the mail workers still doing it. Shout out to all my peoples that work for transit that's holding it down in New York City. To the subway conductors, to the train operators. My sister, she's a tower operator, man. Shout out to her, man. So shout out to all those that keep New York moving, man. So
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons I tell people, during COVID, that was one of the reasons why New York City had to go back first because the transit system was just losing way too much more, and a lot of people didn't, they was, oh yeah, we're working from home. But in you working from home, to your point, the civil servants who rely on the people to get to work, they're at the point where they could be losing their jobs. And if transit shuts down, that's a lot of money lost. That's a lot of money flowing through the city that a lot of people just didn't realize during COVID that this is why you guys had to, like New York City was one of the first cities that had to go back first because they just, but they rely so much on the transit system.
yeah, absolutely, man.
So tell me, how did the diversity and culture of Brooklyn influence your worldview? As you said, you grew up in a very, I would say, man, you're like, without growing up in the projects, you grew up in such a diverse, like I said, the Italian, the Irish, the West Indian, like, how did that influence your worldview?
Well, I'll tell you like this. When you go to other places and when you live in other places, I'll without shaming this, just gentlemen. When I left Brooklyn back in the early 2000s, I moved south to Charlotte, North Carolina, man. I never forget. I worked with this gentleman. We was working, and he saw somebody, and he said, "Hey, man, that guy was Jamaican." I says, "How do you know he's Jamaican? Did you ask him?" I said, "Everybody that has a Caribbean accent is not Jamaican, bro." I says, "It sounds like he's Trinidadian." "Well, how do you know?" I says, "I grew up in a place where I know all the accents and all that stuff, and my godbrother, who's very close, who's still up in New York, shout out to my godbrother Joe. He's still holding it down. He's a transit worker. He's a bus operator on the 41. He's Jamaican. His family's Jamaican, and I know that accent wasn't Jamaican. And I kind of educated the dude. I was like, "Hey, man, you need to travel more. You need to go up to where I'm from." I says, "Because you know." Because it just irritates me because people are just sometimes just insensitive and they just think that or just calling, or just for instance calling all Asian people Chinese, where there's a bunch of people in Asia where you got Koreans, you got Chinese, Vietnamese, Taiwanese, things of that nature. And I think growing up in New York, from growing up where I was at, the kind of jobs that I did, and the school I went to, I went to school in Bensonhurst. You know what I'm saying? In Lafayette, and I went at the time where it was a lot of some kind of racial stuff, man. Every white person wasn't the devil, and every black person wasn't, robbing and stealing either. You know what I'm saying? So there's just a happy medium for these things, man. And I just think it just gave me absolutely a different worldview and a different lens. And I just see people, I'm like, okay, I know that's how those people move, or that's how those people, do what they do culturally and things of that nature. So I just really love the fact that, growing up, like you said, in Brooklyn, it gave me a different worldview and it gave me a different lens and perspective on things and on cultures, and making sure that you respect cultures and not be like how my man, like I said, I ain't gonna call him out, but if he ever watches this, he'll know that the conversation I had with him, and he, I'll tell you this, Coach Ty, he came back to me probably a couple of years later, and he's like, "Hey man, me and my wife, man, we went to Jamaica." I said, "Where? Jamaica, Queens?" He was like, "No, man, we went to Jamaica, the island Jamaica." I said, "Okay, all right, bro, all right, I got you, man. All right, cool." I said, "Well, how'd you feel, man?" He said, "Man, you're right, man. They got the different." I said, "Okay, but this is what I'm talking about, man." I said, "You have your view. You was brought up down here, and this is all you might know." And I just think growing up in Brooklyn, culturally, there's just so many cultures and things of that nature. And you just mentioned the subway and how you riding you're riding through the different neighborhoods through the city, man. You absolutely know how people are in their culture, man. Definitely gives you a different lens and a different view on how people are and how different cultures are, man. Which is Brooklyn. It has a bunch of cultures. I don't know how many. I have to probably look that up. You're gonna make me nerd out tonight, Coach Ty, and look at how many cultures there is in Brooklyn, man. But I'm very thankful for that. I am.
So let me ask you, what role did music, fashion, and food play in your upbringing?
You're getting into
Good
to
stuff.
the nuts, to the stuff there. Music. So, all right. So I'll do for a couple of things, right? So my mother, she raised us in a Pentecostal church. So we went to church a lot and a lot and a lot. I'm joking. Ma, I love you. But you had us in church a lot, right? So went to church a lot, but I love music, right? So I loved gospel, and at the time in Brooklyn at the time had a lot of great gospel artists that still performing today. Like, shout out to my main man, Hezekiah Walker, who had Love Fellowship. A lot of people don't know, hey, musical fact here, that Aaron Hall him and his brother used to sing with Love Fellowship back in the day when they first began. So look at their first album, man. Yep, Aaron Hall's up there singing a song. So yeah, I enjoy gospel music from the likes of, like I said, the Brooklyn Zones, like Hezekiah Walker, James Hall, a bunch of other Brooklyn gospel artists, man, and that shaped it. But I also, like I said, yeah, mom dragged us to church, but when we wasn't in church, me and my brother and my god brother, who I just called out, man, hey man, we was bumping big. We was bumping Wu-Tang, hip hop, the golden era of hip hop is the 90s, and how New York, and yes, I'm biased. I'm absolutely biased, and how, the culture and what it became, and from, coming from the East and coming
Mhm.
into the 90s, the New Jack Swing, Ted Riley, shout out to my main man, Ted Riley. And it was just a different time, man. It just and I love, like I said, I love gospel music, but I love hip hop, and I just love how some of the rappers back in the day, they told real stories, man. They told real stories, and I didn't think, these guys was drug dealers and stuff like that. I just thought they was just telling a story. That's all it is, over a beat. And if the beat was mean, and if because I would say back then, you'll probably agree with me, Coach Ty. Back then, you listen for what? You listen for the lyrics. You listen for the wordplay. Wordplay meaning, like, that if they had some really witty witty sayings about it, and yeah, and you listen for that, and you listen for the lyrics and how it resonated with you. Like what's off his first album, I Gave You Power.
Oh,
Which
yeah,
is,
oh, the gun.
he's talking about how the actual gun, it's a gun. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of people don't really get stuff like that, but that stuff really, really resonated with, Tribe Called Quest, Big Daddy Kane, Big Daddy Kane before,
That was my guy.
yeah, Big Daddy Kane, shout out, rest in peace, Biz Markie. It's just so many, especially like I said, from Brooklyn, Special Ed, you know what I'm saying? Shout out to Special Ed, Edwin to Erasmus, and who else? There's just so much. Like I said, hip hop, absolutely, and R&B, because I loved R&B too, and how the New Jack Swing era, like I said, with Ted Riley, Guy, New Edition being Terry Jam and what's his name? I can't think of his name. Terry.
Lewis.
Yes, they wrote so many hits for Janet Jackson and Johnny Gill. Those guys was phenomenal, man. And I hate to sound like the old man on the lawn, but I am. But I just feel sorry now that what music has begun, and that's probably a whole nother podcast you got. But it's like when you go to a party, like when I went to my cousin's birthday party in Astoria. Shout out to my main man Donald, my cousin Donald, man, he celebrated his 60th birthday party, man. But like when the DJ plays certain songs, those are timeless songs. And what are you doing, Coach Ty? You're
You
absolutely
dancing.
doing what?
Yo,
You're repeating.
when Poison comes on right now, Poison was made in 1990, and that thing will turn a party up
Yes, and it did
immediately.
this past Friday night in the story at my cousin's party, right? When he put that beat on, right? And you just know the words and stuff like that. You just know how it resonates. Scenario. When people put on Scenario, it's over. Especially when you get to Q-Tips and Buster's verses at
Back
the
and
end.
forth, yeah.
Yes, when they go back and forth. So yes, man, I love hip hop. I really do. I love the culture of it and everything. And I gotta admit, I keep my playlist. I keep it with some of the old joints, man, because some of the new joints just doesn't resonate with me. My opinion, music has changed. I think music has changed in all genres. If you talk to, and I love dancehall too. If you talk to my hardcore dancehall folks, they'll always say, the 90s dancehall is where it's at. I don't know what they got going on now.
Yeah, starting with Shaba. I mean, Shaba kind of kicked the door open in Shaba Ranks and
Yes.
Bounty Killer. I just remember going to the clubs in Flatbush, The Legend.
The
They used to be on
legend, dog, right? Yes.
that club changed names so many times. The Pepper Pot.
Pepper Pot, yes.
I remember, like I said, the Biltmore. Like there was so many clubs in Brooklyn, and I went there just one of my best friends. He's Trinidadian, and he's a dude. Hey, yo, we going out Friday night. We going out Friday. We going out Friday night. And like you said, just to be around the culture and the food. I still love West Indian food, like the roti, the curry goat, the curry chicken. Like I love it, man. If I can ever find it, I'm always like I'm on it, man. I'm on it. And like I said, Kane was my guy, man. I have a picture I have to share. I have a picture. I have the flat top. I have the part in there with the lines. I got the cut to my eyebrows. Kane was my guy. I thought I was the light skin version
Light
of
skin Kane.
I thought I was the light skin version of Kane. I had my hair. I took the peroxide. So people don't know. Back in the day, you could take peroxide, put it in your hair, and it would actually change your hair color. So I had the red tint at the top and then the black at the bottom for the peroxide. But you couldn't tell me that Kane was my guy until Big obviously blew up. And Brooklyn, we more Big than Tupac. No disrespect to Tupac. I love his music, but you were always on one side of the fence. And most of us from Brooklyn, we were on Big side. So
on
from
Big side.
Kane to Big, like you said, man, hip hop was that was it, man. I tell people 90. I would say, I mean, Kane was a little bit ahead of his time because he had Rakim really that he competed with. Mainly, I would say 92 to about maybe 08 to 10. Yeah, 08 to 10. That stretch was probably the greatest stretch in hip hop. And unfortunately, I do blame Lil Wayne for ruining it because he was on the lean and stuff, allegedly.
Right.
I don't want them trying to sue me.
Yeah,
Allegedly.
not take
But
you
then
down. That's
when the
right.
mumble rap,
Allegedly.
that's when the mumble rap started. And then that's what these new kids, all they grew up on was mumble rap. And it just took the air out the sails. For me, it took the air out the sails.
I think also too, Todd, the radio stations, man, and I won't call this brother out, but I'll just say he worked at Hot 97, man. And when they did all that stuff of just playing, who they wanted to play, and I guess who was paying the most, man, that changed. I think that changed a lot too for New York hip hop and things of that nature. And I'll just go back to the music stuff because I'll go to the food here in a second for you. I just think with hip hop, what was great about it back then, it was regionalized. So cats in Brooklyn sounded different than cats in Queens, right? Queens cats sounded different than dudes from Uptown, right? Dudes from New York sounded different from dudes from the West Coast. Dudes from Atlanta sounded different from dudes from New York. So it was regionalized, right? So, and it was sometimes it would be cool to see Buster and Big get on something where they're kind of doing the chop and screw to something with Bone Thugs and Harmony, right? To hear them kind of do that, and then those guys kind of do something like New York style or whatever the case may be. And I just think it was regionalized, and you knew where it's from. I think now with hip hop and music, it's not regionalized. Everybody sounds the same. They don't have their own style. Everybody sounds the same, and that for me, it's very sorrowful because Miami dudes don't sound like New York dudes, and
yeah, Trick Daddy never sounded like he was from New York. Exactly.
So I think that's part of the thing. But like I said, you can have a whole show growing up in Brooklyn, the music part with that. But let me get to the food. Like I said, I have a godbrother and his family. They're Jamaican, man. So I always was able to get, you name it, some good oxtail, some good peas and rice, some good plantains, and things of that nature, man. But going around to just neighborhoods and going to some of the hole in the wall restaurants and, like you said, getting some roti and some other items and stuff, man. The food. And if you wanted some good Spanish food, man, maybe had to travel to Williamsburg. Shout out to my Latino people, my Puerto Ricans out there, Dominicans, and you get you some roast con pollo and some of that stuff. If you was feeling it like that, man. So the food is always a plus, and it's definitely growing up. It absolutely resonated, and you knew where to go to the spot. Also, for all my Chinese food loving people, man, there was a spot, and where was that place at? I want to say it was on Myrtle or DeKalb, and y'all probably know what I'm talking about.
On Myrtle, it's Myrtle.
Called Come Cow.
Come Cow. Yeah, that's
Come
Myrtle.
Cow. I don't know if Come Cow is still pulling it in if you want. I like I said, I live in Flatbush, and I absolutely drove over there to go get Chinese food sometimes. I said, yo, man, let's go to Come Cow, man, to go get some Chinese food, because their food was delicious. They had like these little, what was it called? Little pork buns. It was literally like, if I can say it, it was like doesn't sound really, really grotesque because I'm trying to eat healthy now. I am eating healthy now. It was literally like a donut with pork inside of it. I don't know if they still selling it like that, man, but Come Cow was the place to be at. So, man, shout out to Come Cow, man. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, that's a place I haven't been to in a long time. Because normally when I go back to New York, I go to this place called it's in the city. It's called Wohop, and it's in Chinatown on Mott
Mm.
Street. And you got to go to the one that's downstairs. Their Chinese food is phenomenal. But every time I go, I was just in Brooklyn a couple of weeks ago. I get White Castles, I get pizza, and I get Chinese food like clockwork.
Okay, when I was just up there this weekend. I only got I didn't get none of that stuff. I did stop at my sister did take me Sunday morning. We went to after we went to church, and she took me to Lindenwood Diner. She said, "You been to Lindenwood?" I said, "I ain't been to Lindenwood in a minute." I said, "Let's go to Lindenwood, man." And they fixed it up and everything. And I had some corned beef hash, because everybody can't do corned beef hash.
Nah.
They absolutely. I have been down here in the bottom here for a minute, and I've been disappointed every time, man. I said, I know they're gonna do it right here. And sure enough, my corned beef hash was straight.
Yeah. Dude, that's it, man. Shout out to Galaxy Diner, man. People,
Galaxy,
at
yes.
Diner. Yeah, that was a Lindenwood and Galaxy. If you partied in New York and you lived in East New York, you came home. Those were one of the two spots that you was hitting on a late night because you was hungry and you was probably a little tipsy and you need get some food in your stomach. And they serve breakfast 24/7, man.
24.
Them diners, oh my god.
Sometimes we came from the Bell Parkway, so we would stop at the Floridian, my peoples. So we would go there. And yeah, that was another diner, man. There was another one right there on Flatlands and Ralph. But we passed by it, and
That's
they just
right across
closed.
from South Shore.
Yeah,
I know.
right. They just my sister just told me they just closed that one. Yeah, that one just closed here a couple months ago. Yep.
Yeah, we'll
I
have to
love a
look up
diner,
and put it in
man.
the notes. I remember that diner too, because that's when so if I wanted to eat there on my way to Kings Plaza and you had to wait like 20 hours for the 78 bus to come, you can get off the 6 though. I would get off the 6 bus, go over there to the Ralph Avenue Diner. I can't remember the name. Eat, and you could eat for a
Arch
while.
Diner.
Arch Diner, yes. And
Arch
you
Diner.
would
I
not
just looked
miss
up
the
real quick.
78 bus. The 78 bus, you would still you could eat, relax, let your food digest, and still not miss the bus. And 78 was the back way to go to Kings Plaza for the
Kings Plaza,
46.
correct.
But that
Yes, you
bus was
take
worse
Ralph
than a
out.
46.
God bless you, man. 41 was my route.
So since you was there recently, tell me how has how what did you think of the changes that was made? Obviously you had to see how much East New York changed, but tell me, what do you think about the changes that they've made out there, since the 90s?
So again, I mean, I still go up there often, but I haven't been there as much. So last time I was there about 3 years ago. So shout out to my sister again. Like I said, she showed me around so I can look and see. And absolutely, there's been so many changes, even since the last 3 years I've been up there. Especially East New York, especially around the Spring Creek area, around Lindenwood Diner, and I see all these new buildings up, and I was like, "Yo, this used to be nothing but a field here." I said, "Man, they just put the buildings up there, right there in Linden Boulevard, where Magic Johnson's theaters used to be, in Times Square store." Well, guess what? That's a new supermarket, the theater.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a supermarket. It's a brand new supermarket. They flipped that into a supermarket now.
Well, that was originally a supermarket. When it was TSS, there was a supermarket next to it. And then it went to what was that? Not Caldor. It'll come to me. It was supposed to be something else, and then Magic Johnson and them. No, Malik Yoba. It wasn't Magic Johnson. It was Malik Yoba that was part in that theater from New York Undercover.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's no longer there. There's a brand new supermarket there, and I said, "Wow,
Crazy."
Yeah,
But did you
definitely.
see all the how? Did you see back behind Flatlands how they built that up all around the Gateway Mall?
So let me go back to growing up in Star City, right? So, like I said, when I lived in Star City, it was brand new, and I lived right there at the Pennsylvania Avenue and Seaview Avenue. I lived in G8, so I lived right there on Seaview Avenue, right there by the entrance of the Bell Parkway, and across the highway at the time, that used to be a landfill. So anybody watching that's Shirley Chisholm Park, that's what they call it now. When I passed by here on the Bell Parkway the other day going to JFK, yeah, that used to be a landfill, y'all. And now they converted it into a park. I think that's phenomenal. Shout out to Brooklyn for doing that and making that, that whole area. Because we used to play over there, and well, now you're gonna know that I wasn't supposed to be over there, man. But I'm grown now, so got to catch me to beat me, mom. But now I used to be play over there, man. Over there in the water and all the weeds and all that stuff, man. And Now they wait till I get grown to make it to an actual park, and they've made it really nice from what I can see from the Bell Parkway. And they have some bike trails, they have walking trails and things of that nature. And I think that they're trying to, of course, make it for the good. And shout out to them for doing that, for trying to incorporate some of these things. Also, I know what I was going to talk about when we was talking about Robert Moses, how now you have this flight from Long Island back now to Brooklyn because everybody wants to be near the train. So now neighborhoods like Bedford-Stuyvesant and things of that nature have absolutely changed. And, you see more Caucasian people in the neighborhood. And not saying that's bad or anything like that, man, but the neighborhood has absolutely changed, man. I saw something on Instagram the other day where they was having a block party somewhere, and it was a good mixed crowd of people, man. And again, shout out to Bedford Stuyvesant to trying to clean things up and make it I guess palatable for everybody to live there, man. So that's one of the other changes that I saw. What else did I see? Yeah, just going back to over there what you were saying, man. It looks like New York at the time is trying to catch up with other Brooklyn is trying to catch up with other cities where they have, things just like a regular strip mall, like things that we might take for granted now that we live in Florida and stuff like that, where, we just go to strip mall where there's a Publix, and there's this, there's that there. And now that's even more commonplace up there. So, but I did notice this, and I was joking with my sister. I said, yo, is it me? Is it because Dunkin' Donuts has always been a New York staple, man. But it just,
Yeah,
to
it's always
me,
yeah.
it looked like there was more Dunkin' Donuts around. There was more Chipotle's around. And it looked like there was a Popeyes on every block. Every block. I was like, dang. I said, there's another Popeyes. I said, there was one just 2 blocks away.
Yeah, and that one on Pennsylvania and Stanley has been there for like forever.
That and the White Castles, yes.
And the White Castles. My mother lived in that building right across the street from White Castles. That's where she grew up and lived.
Okay.
That White Castles used to be a junkyard before it was White Castles. It was a junkyard.
You know what? I vaguely remember all of that stuff.
The Models and all that. Well, I don't think it's Model. The Models is a Burlington now. That
correct.
was all factories. That was all closed off buildings as factories.
Yep. I was just, it's funny you talking about that part over there, man. I said, man, yo, I miss Sunnydale. I miss getting me
Yeah, me and my friends still talk about Sunnydale. We would walk to Sunnydale. You walk to Sunnydale when there was a family barbecue because you was gonna get a lot of hot dogs, you was gonna get pounds of chicken, and you was gonna get tons of Sunnydale drinks. That was a staple at every cookout in Brooklyn. My God, Sunnydale, wow.
Yep, Sunnydale, the drinks, the orange, the pina colada was my favorite one. I was like, damn, man, I hated that they closed, man. But
yeah, it's I think it might still be a furniture. It was a furniture store, but that was like 15, 20 years ago. I remember it converted to like a furniture. It broke my heart that they shut it down.
Yeah, absolutely.
So before we get into some Knicks talk, let me ask you this: what's one piece of Brooklyn that you carry with you no matter where you go?
I would say most people from Brooklyn are just go-getters and determined to do what it takes. I would say the grit. Yes, my parents, they did an awesome job of instilling some of the values and stuff in me, but you live in Brooklyn, man. You gotta have some grit, and you gotta have some tenacity, and you had to have you had to have some go-getterness about yourself. If that's a verb, if I could say so. So I would say that, man. I think I take that with me, and it's absolutely incorporated with me. To the fact that I'll tell you this, coworkers at work, even today, man, they said, man, this guy from New York, man, he just always. I said, what? Always what? He said, man, you just always trying to. I said, what? Get it? Yes.
That's right.
That's the only way I know how to do.
That's right.
I don't sit back and let nobody try to get it for me. I get it for myself. So that's just how it is, man. You know what I'm saying? Don't wait for nobody. You just try to just do your own thing, man, and go for it, man. And if you swing and miss, you get up and try again, because that's all I know how to do.
And listen, I'm gonna play this clip for my girls basketball team because I tell them I said, Coach, don't let nobody mess with his money. I'll let nobody mess with my money. If money gets messed up, it's because of something that I did, but I would never at my job let anybody mess with my money. They don't mess with my peace, my happiness, and my money.
What's
So
up?
yeah. So when you said all that, I was like, yeah, like, we go get it. We don't sit back and wait for somebody to hand us a promotion or do this. Now we gonna go get it. And if you knock us down, I used to work for Comcast back in Delaware. I had 11 interviews for supervisor before I made supervisor, where most people would have gave up after 2. I had 11 interviews. And I said, nah, you're not gonna keep me out. Like, nah, I want it. So
Giving up is so easy, man. It just is. And I know people watching this saying, you say what you want to say. You don't know my circumstances. I don't have to know your circumstances. I just know that giving up is just really easy, man. And you can just give up and be like, that's all, folks. Nah, man. That's not the end of the story. If that's how you want your story to be told, so be it. I don't want it to be told like that. And I don't say that at arrogance or anything like that. It's just the fact that, if the one door slams, I got to go try to pry open the other one. That's just how I feel.
yeah, no, yeah, you're absolutely right. And speaking of not giving up, let me transition to the Knicks real quick, man, because like I said, listen, I didn't grow up a Knicks fan. I didn't hate the Knicks. Let me put that out. I didn't hate the Knicks. I just didn't grow up a Knicks fan. My dad was a Knicks fan. I love Patrick, and like I told you in the pre-production, I'm old school Big East. I love Big East basketball growing up.
Yes, same here.
So Patrick Ewing going to the Knicks, obviously, I watched them. The battles with the Bulls, the Pacers, Miami, like whoever the team, and now they got hot again, and they fired Tibbs, which to me it made no sense because, and I'm gonna give you my thoughts, and I definitely want your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
The Knicks to me were built to stop Boston, meaning OG and Bridges. You gave away 5 first-round picks for Bridges, which is way too much. But
Jesus,
I
don't remind
but I
me.
get it because you figured that you guys were going to be competing for the next 5 years, so those picks would have been at the bottom anyway. And because they can't even get the Volchek kid in the game, I think is pretty good. But they were built to stop Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown because those guys are ISO. Indiana moves too much. Neesmith moves too much. Halliburton moves too much. Nembhard moves too much. So they were getting crushed in the pick and rolls. Obviously, Tibbs, his style wasn't built for that. So, to fire him, for him to get this far and then get fired, I thought was terrible. Let me get your. What did you think about them firing Tibbs after getting him as far as he did? And basically, he changed the culture.
I'll say this. Shout out to Coach Tom Thibodeau. First of all, he brought back stability to the building, to the people in 5 Penn Plaza, Madison Square Garden, on 7th Avenue between 31st and 33rd Streets. He brought back some stability, which has been lacking the last 25 years. The Knicks have been a laughingstock. They've been hiring and firing coaches. And I always say this, like I said, yes, I watch hockey. I absolutely do. I keep my ear to the ground with hockey. I'm not a hockey aficionado. We have one on our show, but I love hockey and I watch it. And if anything I need to know, or I ask my hockey dude, and that's exactly what his name is, the hockey dude, Dan the hockey dude,
I
right?
heard you mention them. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just think in that building, right? What's his name? The owner. I can't think of it. Jim Dolan. Dolan doesn't bother the hockey. He leaves the general manager, I think Glenn Sather, he leaves those people alone. Maybe because he doesn't know hockey or whatever the case may be. But I do know the last 20 some odd years when he inherited this from his old man, he's been meddling with the Knicks. And for whatever reason, he hasn't been meddling with the Knicks. He's let Leon Rose, shout out to general manager Leon Rose, to kind of build something here and have some stability. In theory, do I agree with them going in another direction? In theory, yes. But as you can see, the Knicks are swinging and missing, and they're going after people who are employed. They're going after Jason Kidd. They're going after Ike and Dome with Houston. People who got jobs already. So it's like almost to me, you fired Tibbs for what and for whom, right? I don't pretty much want Malone because Malone's going to be the same thing. He's kind of stubborn in his ways. That's why, the They had pretty much a cool. Players had a cool with him. So I don't think he's the answer. I just thought they was going to have him run it back one more time and tell him, hey, you might just need to play a little bit more. But Tibbs is stubborn. You know what I'm saying? This is how he's been in Chicago. This is how he was in Minnesota. And now this is how he is with the Knicks. And I was reading and hearing that they, some people, they wouldn't say who, but they was afraid that, he would play Brunson so much, he would break Brunson down like how Rose got broken down with the Bulls. So in theory, yes, I agree, but there's no plan. There was no backup plan. Like they didn't have a plan to hire a coach. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, Jason Kidd, he got the raw deal with that whole Luka trade and stuff like that. He's got Cooper Flag coming in. Why would he? And my man DA, shout out to my man DA. And DA me and him kept talking. And he said, "Yo, that's probably not the Knicks is not the most attractive job because, like you said, they don't have any picks. That's for one, no picks, and your team is not old, but it's not young. It's right there in the middle. And those that shouting and screaming, yo, we want Giannis for what? How you gonna get him?
You're gonna have to give up OG and
yes, and I don't want to do that.
OG and Cat are gonna have to go, and then that puts you back to where you were. Because to me, Giannis can't guard Tatum.
No, absolutely not.
So that puts you back behind. To me, that puts you back behind the Celtics. I mean, did you see how Indiana even exposed Giannis? Like, I mean, he didn't have a number two running with him, but I don't think he's the he's gonna.
I don't think he's the answer either. Like I said, maybe I like the Cat trade, but I knew Cat was going to really be big on defense, and that showed in this game, right? And he was getting killed in the pick and roll too. How he was getting caught in the high post and not willing to cover. And so it's I don't know. It was just, how can I say it's the Knicks. Y'all got to hit this coaching thing right, whoever y'all get. And it can't be Malone. And y'all got to start going after people that got jobs. I was like, man, why are we going after people that got jobs? I said, this is dumb. It shows like y'all not ready, or y'all had something. Y'all thought these people was going to let them leave. These people are still in the contract. And guess what they're going to want? They're going to want some compensation for this too.
And you got nothing to give.
You have nothing to give. Yeah, we'll give you a kid. But who you gonna give it for? Oh, I forgot. You gave away your picks for Bridges, and like you said, they thought they was gonna win, and they thought those picks was gonna be low and stuff like that. But that still was a lot for Bridges. It still was a lot. I think he's a good. Player.
Your role play. He shined in his moment with Brooklyn, but his most success came when he was in Phoenix as a role player. He was a 3-and-D guy. And that's what he was going to do with the like he didn't need to score 20, 25 points like he did in Brooklyn. He's a role player, and he got those points because of volume of shots. He's not going to get those same volume of shots.
Oh, not with Brunson playing and Cat. You know what I'm saying? So that's my thing. In theory, I see why they did it, and there was some players grumbling. Also, I understand that, and I understand that theory. But y'all did it, and y'all wasn't even prepared to see who was going to be the next coach. And so we're just out here. We're just out here winging it. We're just out here just going after people who's got jobs already. And theoretically, they're not going to let these people leave without compensation. So I think that's just a big thing. Can I say one other thing, Coach Todd? Let me tap into this vein right here. Getting back to basketball in the city. I need everybody in Brooklyn to understand this, that the Knicks run the city. It's not the Nets. I had some Twitter wars and Facebook wars a couple years ago when the Nets had KD and stuff like that, and had Kyrie, and I said the Knicks run the city, not the Nets. And to be honest, I'll say this too. From like I said, I nerd out on stuff like that. To be honest, I think the Nets probably should have stayed in New Jersey and went to Newark and went to play in the Prudential Center with the Devils. I think they would have had more of a following, and I think, in my opinion, than they do now. Because now Nets are not winning, and nobody's really going to the Barclays Center. So
it's a nice. I'll say this: it is a nice place, though. I went there.
100%. I've been there 4 times already. It's a beautiful arena. It's state of the art. It's everything you wanted with an arena, man. I just think that the Nets probably should have stayed in New Jersey. I think they would have had more of a following. And so I just had to reiterate that. I reiterated that on our platform just for y'all folks. Just let y'all know the Knicks run the city, not the Brooklyn Nets. If they was ever to ever go into the Eastern Conference Finals, it would probably be bananas. But you'll still get more because Knicks fans travel well. So you'll probably get more people, Knicks fans, than Net fans at a Net game if they went to the playoffs like that, man. So, but shout out to the Nets. Shout out to Jay-Z. He got his little percentage.
I think he sold his stake.
Yeah, he sold his stake a couple years
He
ago.
kept getting in trouble going into locker rooms, college locker rooms and stuff like that. And he's an owner. It's like, dude, you can't move as Jay-Z. You got to move like a owner.
Like an
I
owner.
believe he sold his stake.
Okay. Yeah, yes. I did hear that. He just sold his stake. He don't own it no more. And so
listen, speaking of platforms, let everybody know where they can find you. I know you got the sign over your head, you got the hat on your head, but let everybody know where they can find you, what days you guys shoot on, and please tune into their show. It's great, it's awesome. You even go and post on YouTube and check it out. But let me let you, tell them where they can find you.
So thanks, Coach Todd. You can find us at sportschaserspodcast.net. Every episode that we have recorded audio-wise is on there, and video-wise too, because the YouTube feed goes to our website. So that's our website, and you can get everything there. We got blog posts, we got merchandise. As you see, I got this nice, beautiful hat on. We actually got a secondary logo that we just came up with. And we're just trying to bring some real talk back to sports talk radio. We're not a debate show. Debate is, some people's thing. They like that stuff. I like to have conversations, really enriched conversations about stuff like how when Coach Todd came on the other day and he was in the comments and we was talking about NIL. Me, him, and my main man D from Harlem, we can talk about stuff like that all day long, and just not the surface level stuff, and not the I don't do. So somebody reached out to me the other day and they wanted to say if I want to come on and talk about, who's better, Mike and LeBron. I don't do that. I just don't. It's been beaten to death. People got who they love and who they like. No, thank you. I think there's other stuff to talk about. And I think the NBA, getting back to the NBA, I think the NBA is in great hands with stars like Halliburton and SGA. So let the old guys just, set out the pasture and let the new guys just take over and let them do their thing, man. That's my thing. So yeah, we just have really healthy conversations when it comes to sports, and we cover all sports, and we have all types of people that we interview that come on our platform. So we record on Mondays at 7:00. And during football season, we got the Monday Night Blitz, we call it. So from football season, when college and the pros start, from late August to February, we have that show from 7 to 9:30, and 7 to 8:30, not 9:30. And then on Thursdays, that's our flagship show. That's when we started really recording. We do that live. We do that 7:30. And we're on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, X. Hey, we just did our first live show on TikTok, man. So we went live on TikTok. So we're live on TikTok, man. So we're live anywhere you can find Sports Chasers Podcast. But put that in the search bar. You'll see us somewhere. You'll find us somewhere. You got us somewhere, man. And we're here, man. And we ain't going nowhere, man. So shout out to the Chasers. Shout out to all my co-hosts and all the fellas. That's holding us down. Shout out to my mom, man. My praying mother, man. They be praying for the Sports Chasers, man. She be in the comments, strong, man, and she be doing her thing, man. So shout out to mom. Shout out to dad too. Who wasn't for him throwing that ball, and getting that bat and glove for me, man. So shout out to my parents. I love them much, and to my sister and my brother, who's one of the co-hosts with me on the show, man. So shout out to the Warren clan. So.
Shout out to them, man. Yeah. And listen, and I have to tell you, I'm a Raiders fan, but we'll have to have that story for another time.
Yeah, you got to come on the platform. How did that become? But you know what? My man DA on the show, he's a Niner fan. So I can see that.
But we'll come and talk, but I'll just say my ties back to, if you remember, electric football.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that. That's how my dad introduced me to that, and we'll talk about that.
Yes, I got to get you on to talk about that. Absolutely, man.
But thank you, man, and thank you everybody for tuning in. And as I always like to end the podcast, you could have spent your time doing anything in the world, but you spent it with us, and we appreciate it. Yo, big up Brooklyn. Yo, we out. Peace.
Peace.
That's a wrap for today's Growing Up Brooklyn podcast episode. Be sure to like and hit that subscribe button.